Why do Scorpio push relationships the silent goodbye? There's something haunting about the way a Scorpio ends a relationship. They don't throw fits, they don't beg, they don't scream, they disappear. And the most chilling part, they do it without ever making you the villain, because you never saw it coming, but they did. Scorpios don't leave because they stopped loving you. They leave because they saw too clearly. They saw cracks in the foundation. They saw betrayal in your silence. They saw a future where their soul would shrink if they stayed. And that they can't tolerate. People often say Scorpios are too intense. But here's what most never understand. A Scorpio doesn't push people away for fun. They do it to protect their soul, to reclaim their power, to survive what others ignore, because for a Scorpio, love is never casual. When they let you in, it means you've touched their deepest, rawest places. The parts they hide from the world, and sometimes even from themselves. But when those sacred spaces feel violated, even by subtle disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional absence, Scorpio doesn't start a war. They start the exit. And when they begin to pull away, it's rarely loud, it's barely noticeable at first. A missing message, a colder stare, a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. By the time you realize they're gone, they've already grieved you in silence. They've already buried the bond. And that's what makes a Scorpio's goodbye unforgettable. Not because they left dramatically, but because they left with so-level finality. So today we're diving deep beneath the surface, beyond what typical astrology says, into the 12 unmistakable signs that a Scorpio is slowly, silently pushing a relationship away, and more importantly, why they do it. This isn't just a list, it's a roadmap through the Scorpio heart, wounded, wise, and willing to walk away when the energy turns toxic. Are you ready to enter the mind of the zodiac's most mysterious soul? Because once you do, you'll never look at their silence the same way again. Sign 1, the quiet begins before the goodbye. The first sign is the hardest to detect, and that's why it's so dangerous. It's not a fight. It's not a dramatic exit, it's a shift in silence. One day, the Scorpio who used to flood your inbox with so-level questions, the one who used to lock eyes with you as if reading your past lives, just stops talking as much. You chalk it up to stress. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're tired, but Scorpio's silence is never random. It's sacred, it's intentional, it's the start of their inner retreat. What you don't see is what's already happening beneath the surface. They're observing, calculating, asking themselves the hardest question of all, is this still worth my soul? Because for Scorpio, energy is everything, and when the energy begins to shift, even slightly, they feel it in their bones. They won't always call you out, they won't beg for reassurance. They'll go inward and see if your actions answer the questions they no longer dare to speak. This quiet isn't apathy, it's protective detachment. It's not the kind of silence that asks for attention. It's the kind that whispers, I'm watching who you are when you think I'm still all in. The Scorpio has entered what I call the soul scan mode, where they observe how deeply you care when they stop giving. They listen to what your silence says in return, and if you meet their quiet with more absence, they don't feel confused, they feel confirmed. That's the terrifying thing about Scorpio energy. They don't always need proof to feel the truth. They can sense when the loyalty has faded. They can smell deception like smoke, and they will walk away before the fire even starts. I once worked with a Scorpio woman named Kyra. She had been in a 3-year relationship where everything looked perfect on paper, until one day she just shut down. No warning, no accusations. When I asked her why she left, she said, he didn't cheat, he didn't lie. But he stopped feeling me, he stopped seeing me, so I left before I had to explain what he should have already known. That's how Scorpio works. They feel the subtle breaks in soul connection. They don't always wait for the earthquake. They feel the tremor and choose to evacuate emotionally. So if your Scorpio has gone quiet, don't dismiss it as a mood. Don't mistake it for pettiness, because it may just be the beginning of the end. Sign 2, they stop sharing their inner world. You'll notice it slowly but painfully. The Scorpio who once shared their dreams, their darkness, their childhood wounds, starts replying with surface-level words. You ask, "How are you?" And instead of a real answer, like the ones that used to peel their soul open, you get, "I'm fine." But they're not fine, they're detaching. You see, for Scorpio, vulnerability is sacred currency. They don't offer it to just anyone. When they love, they open the gates carefully, yes, but completely. They let you see the parts of them no one else gets close to, their trauma, their shame, their spiritual battles, the emotional wars they've fought alone for years. So when they stop letting you in, when they begin building walls where there used to be bridges, it means one thing: you've been spiritually downgraded in their life, not out of anger, not even out of bitterness, out of self-protection. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Scorpio never really stops loving you. They stop trusting you with their soul. And when trust breaks, even slightly, their instinct isn't to fight. It's to retreat. They may still be physically there. They'll answer your texts. They'll eat dinner with you. They might even laugh at your jokes. But the soul sharing, gone. You won't hear about their dreams anymore. You won't get their midnight fears. You won't be invited into their inner sanctum, the emotional temple they used to let you pray in. And here's the part that stings: they won't even explain why. Because to Scorpio, if they have to explain what you already felt them pull back from, you were never attuned to their soul in the first place. This happened to a man named Julian I once met in a Scorpio discussion group. He talked about how his Scorpio partner went from being deeply expressive to eerily silent. "I thought she was depressed," he said, "but in reality she was detaching, and I missed every warning sign." Julian said the moment he knew it was over was when she looked at him and said, "You still know facts about me, but you don't know me anymore." That's what losing Scorpio's inner world feels like. You're standing in the same room, but emotionally, you're a stranger now. So if you feel like your Scorpio has stopped bringing you into their soul, don't wait for them to explain. Start asking yourself what part of the connection they no longer feel safe in, because by the time they build those walls, they've already cried on the inside. They've already mourned the emotional intimacy you didn't notice was fading. Sign 3, logic replaces emotion. This sign can be so misleading that many people don't even realize they're losing a Scorpio until the heart is long gone. It begins when Scorpio stops feeling with you and starts thinking around you. You'll notice they've become more cold, more factual. No more deep stares, no more "I feel" conversations. Instead, it's, "I don't think this is healthy. I've been evaluating our dynamic. I'm observing patterns." They're no longer arguing from the heart. They're speaking from the mind, the same brilliant, ruthless mind that once protected you, but is now protecting them from you. This isn't emotional immaturity. It's Scorpio's ultimate self-defense mechanism. When their heart starts to feel unsafe, they shut the emotional faucet and open the vault of logic. Because here's what most people don't understand. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, the planet of transformation and death. When a relationship feels like it's decaying, even emotionally, they don't wait for the corpse to rot. They autopsy it while it's still breathing. And when they do, they become cold, strategic, distant, but it's not cruelty, it's clarity. A Scorpio who has started thinking more than feeling is no longer asking, "Do I love you?" They're asking, "Is this safe for my soul?" They'll start to calculate how much energy they're giving you. Compared to how much they're getting, they'll notice how many times they've forgiven you and how little you've evolved. And once that evaluation begins, there's usually no going back, because now you're being assessed, not loved, not out of pettiness, but out of preservation. One Scorpio woman I interviewed, a psychologist named Andrea, said it best. When I start speaking to you like I'm presenting a case in court, it's because I've already buried the emotional evidence. If your Scorpio is no longer responding with passion, but with points and patterns, it doesn't mean they're healed. It means they're preparing the emotional divorce. So if your Scorpio partner suddenly seems more logical than loving, don't celebrate their calm. Understand that it may be their final kindness, the last phase of love before the exit. Because when Scorpio uses reason instead of rage, they're no longer trying to save the connection. They're preparing to walk away from it cleanly and for good. Sign 4, they start analyzing everything you do. When a Scorpio starts watching you more than loving you, you're already in the danger zone. At first, it might seem like they're just observant. Scorpios are known for their penetrating gaze, their psychic attention to detail. But when they begin analyzing, not just noticing, every little thing you say or do, you're no longer in their hearts. You're under their microscope. They watch how long it takes you to reply. They notice which words you no longer say. They track the shift in your tone, your timing, your touch. And this isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Because Scorpio doesn't react to one mistake. They react to the emotional trend line, and when the numbers start falling, they don't scream, they investigate. This phase of Scorpio detachment is deeply misunderstood. To outsiders, it looks like they're nitpicking, but the truth is they're verifying something that already hurts. They're trying to confirm, am I the only one still fighting for this? Have you already left emotionally and just haven't told me? One of the most common Scorpio wounds is loving someone who slowly checks out. And when they start sensing that emotional fade, they don't ask. They scan. They watch your every move, hoping you'll prove them wrong. But most of the time, they get the answer they feared. I once knew a Scorpio man named Eli. He told me about a past relationship where he began noticing small shifts. She stopped finishing their rituals, stopped texting goodnight, stopped asking about his day. When I asked if he confronted her, he said, "No, I waited. I wanted to see if she'd correct the drift, but she didn't, so I let her go without explaining why. Because if she didn't notice what was dying, she didn't deserve to grieve it." That's the psychology of Scorpio detachment. They'll study you with forensic precision, but it's not to punish you, it's to decide. Is this person still worthy of my full self? So if your Scorpio is watching you more than usual, if they seem unusually quiet, taking mental notes while you speak, don't assume they're planning a fight. They might be preparing their exit, silently, permanently, because Scorpio's heart doesn't break all at once, it breaks over time while they're still there. They're still smiling, they're still watching, and when the analysis is complete, they won't ask for one last talk, they'll just vanish. Sign 5, they begin testing your loyalty harder than ever. This is where the Scorpio you thought you knew starts to change. Their questions become sharper, their silence is heavier, their energy feels like a quiet interrogation. Suddenly, they're not just your lover, they're your spiritual investigator. They'll drop subtle statements not to start an argument, but to see how you respond. They want to know, will you lie, will you deflect, will you stay calm, or will you crumble under pressure? Because here's the thing. Scorpio doesn't test you to hurt you, they test you to see if their soul is still safe with you. They've likely already sensed a crack, a betrayal of trust, an inconsistency in your energy. And once they feel that, they don't confront it directly. They build a maze and watch how you walk through it. They ask questions like, would you ever keep a secret from me? Have you ever told someone else something you didn't tell me? Or they make cryptic remarks like, it's funny how people change when they think no one's watching. These aren't random thoughts. They're traps, not for punishment but for truth, because Scorpio knows something powerful. If someone is loyal, you don't need to control them. But if someone isn't, you'll always feel like you do. That's why when they start to feel insecure in the relationship, they return to their core trait, investigation. I once had a Scorpio client, Marla, who began noticing her partner was emotionally pulling away. Instead of confronting him with accusations, she said nothing. She started creating small loyalty tests, mentioning a private fear to see if he would tell anyone, waiting to see how long it took him to check on her after a tough day. When I asked her why she didn't just ask him directly, she replied, because truth under pressure is more honest than truth when you ask for it. That's pure Scorpio. If they sense betrayal or even the scent of disloyalty, they'll probe quietly but powerfully. And if you fail their tests, you won't hear about it. They won't yell, they won't cry, they'll simply say less, trust less, and love you from farther away, until eventually they don't love you at all. So if your Scorpio partner suddenly feels harder on you, more intense, more guarded, more probing, don't take it as cruelty. Take it as a final opportunity to restore their faith. Because once a Scorpio feels you've failed their loyalty test, they don't ask for makeup exams. They move on soul first, body second. Sign 6, they talk about endings in abstract ways. You'll hear it in passing. A strange sentence, a cryptic phrase, a subtle shift in tone. I wonder what life would be like if I just started over. Some chapters aren't meant to last forever. Not everything has to end with a bang, sometimes it just fades. These aren't just poetic musings, they're emotional smoke signals. Because when a Scorpio starts talking about endings, not directly, but in abstract metaphoric ways, they're preparing their own soul for departure. It's not to manipulate you, it's not to test your reaction. It's to gently release the grip of attachment within themselves. You see, Scorpio doesn't leave relationships like most signs. They don't flip a switch, they transform out of them, layer by layer, emotion by emotion. They may still sleep next to you, they may still smile across the table, but the conversation begins to shift from we to I, from planning to reflecting, from presence to philosophy. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss the fact that Scorpio is already halfway gone. They're detaching the soul before they detach the body. I once sat with a Scorpio man, Diego, who had been in a long-term relationship. He said for 3 months before the breakup, he kept making little comments. Maybe we're just here to teach each other something, not stay forever. Sometimes the people who love us most still have to let us go. When his partner finally asked, "Are you leaving me?" he answered, "I already have, I was just waiting for you to hear me." That's the chilling reality of Scorpio detachment. They don't always slam the door. Sometimes they simply stop knocking. So if your Scorpio has started waxing philosophical about breakups, rebirth, or letting go, don't treat it as casual. These abstract conversations are their emotional rehearsal. They're training themselves to say goodbye without saying it out loud. Until the day they do, because by the time Scorpio speaks the ending directly, they've already mourned you in metaphors. Sign 7, they become hyper-independent again. Scorpio is naturally independent. They can go days, weeks, even years operating in solitude like spiritual warriors. But when they fall in love, real love, they merge. They let someone into their routines, their rituals, their rawest moments. They share power, they lean in. So when a Scorpio who once depended on you for emotional support suddenly pulls everything back inward, you're not witnessing confidence. You're witnessing self-protection in its purest form. They go from we to me. From sharing problems to solving everything on their own. From asking for help to doing it in silence. And the shift isn't subtle, it's sharp. You'll feel it in the way they stop asking for your opinion. In the way they start spending more time alone. In the way they say, "I've got it," even when they clearly don't. This isn't Scorpio trying to impress you with strength. It's them reclaiming their spiritual sovereignty because something inside them has whispered, you may no longer be a safe place. Scorpio will never beg for emotional security. If they sense the bond is fragile, they won't fight to hold it together. They'll fortify themselves emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and prepare to stand alone again. I once interviewed a Scorpio woman named Rochelle. She had been in a 5-year relationship that seemed unshakable, but over time she noticed her partner stopped showing up emotionally. He became distracted, distant. When I asked her how she responded, she said, "I stopped expecting him to be there. I took back all my pieces. I became the woman I was before I let him in, only colder." That's the Scorpio way. They don't throw tantrums, they retreat into their fortress. So if you notice your Scorpio suddenly throwing themselves into solo projects, focusing more on their goals than your connection, and pulling back from couple dynamics, don't assume it's a phase, it's a spiritual withdrawal. An internal reboot. They're reminding themselves they can survive without you, because they no longer feel certain that you'd stay through the storms. And here's the harsh truth. Once Scorpio rebuilds their independence, they rarely let you back in at the same level. Because in their world, having to relearn self-reliance after giving you access feels like betrayal they won't risk twice. Sign 8, they subtly remove you from their world. Scorpio doesn't cut you off all at once. They begin by gently erasing your fingerprints from their life, one detail at a time. That favorite playlist you shared, deleted. The candle scent you both loved, no longer lit, the photo of you two on their desk, quietly replaced by a symbol of solitude. They don't announce these changes. They don't say, "I'm letting you go." They simply subtract you. Not to punish you, not to provoke you, but to prepare themselves for a life where you are no longer the center of their emotional gravity. You may still be in their home, still speaking, even still sleeping beside them. But they've started a process of emotional ghosting, and it's not random. It's spiritual, it's premeditated. You see, Scorpio rules death and rebirth, not just physical, but relational. And when they feel a connection is decaying, they begin clearing space for transformation. They'll stop mentioning you in their long-term plans. They'll stop inviting you into their sacred spaces. They'll make future decisions without asking your input, and they'll do it with a calm so eerie. You'll start questioning whether you were ever that close to them to begin with. I once had a Scorpio male friend, a musician named Caleb, who had been deeply in love with his partner until something shifted. She started lying in small ways, he said. Nothing dramatic, just little betrayals. I didn't yell, I just started erasing her. He unfollowed her secret accounts, stopped playing the songs she inspired, stopped reaching for her hand when they walked. When I asked him why he didn't confront her, he answered, "Because confrontation would have meant I still wanted to fix it. I didn't. I wanted to disappear without starting a war." That's what this phase is. It's the invisible breakup. If you're not attuned to the spiritual language of Scorpio detachment, you'll miss the most important part. It's the fact that they're already leaving, even if their body is still beside you. So if your Scorpio has stopped weaving you into their world, if they no longer include you in the rituals that once made your love sacred, understand that their soul is making room for silence, and eventually for someone new. Because once Scorpio begins removing you from their life, they rarely pause the process. They don't do emotional spring cleaning halfway. They cleanse the connection to its roots, until there's no trace left of what once was. Sign 9, they confront you with brutal, soul-level truths. Scorpios are famous for their sting, but not always in anger. Sometimes their sting comes wrapped in truth so raw it leaves you speechless. They say things like, "You haven't been present for a long time, you just show up. I don't trust your energy anymore, and I don't want to fake it. You love me, but not in a way that makes me feel seen." They won't yell, they won't throw things. They'll just look you straight in the eyes and cut through your illusions like a scalpel. Because here's what you must understand: Scorpio doesn't confront when they're still emotionally dependent. They confront when they're preparing to close the chapter and want to leave no doubt why they did. This isn't about punishing you, it's about liberation. They need to say what they've been silently enduring. They need you to feel, even for one moment, the emotional war they've fought behind their silence. But their words won't be casual, they'll be surgical, precise, unfiltered, and frighteningly accurate. Because Scorpio isn't interested in being nice when they speak truth, they're interested in being real. Even if that truth scorches the ground you stand on. I once had a Scorpio client named Liana, a trauma counselor. She told me about the final conversation she had with a man she loved for years. He kept deflecting, kept giving her half-love, kept showing up with empty promises. One night over dinner, she calmly said, "You don't love me. You love the version of me that doesn't challenge you, but I'm done playing small for your comfort." She didn't cry, she didn't wait for him to respond. She paid the bill, walked out, and never returned. That's how Scorpio ends it. With truth so sharp it doesn't need repetition. If your Scorpio suddenly begins speaking from a place of blunt, spiritual honesty, not to provoke, not to attack, but to reveal, you are standing at the edge of your relationship's death or rebirth. Because Scorpio doesn't always need to disappear. Sometimes their weapon is truth that strips you naked of excuses, lies, illusions. And if you're strong enough to stand in it, you might just earn a chance at resurrection. But if you can't, they'll bury you in the truth and walk away clean. Sign 10, they use sarcasm or emotional stings more often. Scorpio doesn't lash out randomly. Their words, even when sarcastic, are intentional daggers dipped in meaning. So when the Scorpio who once whispered love into your soul starts making biting remarks, cold jokes, or subtle digs, that's not just irritation, that's pain dressed in armor. They'll say things like, "Wow, glad you found time for me this week. Maybe I should start treating you the way you treat me, see how long you stay. Must be nice to only show up when it's convenient." These aren't just sarcastic flares. They're emotional Morse code. The Scorpio trying to say, "I'm hurting and I don't trust you enough to say it gently anymore." Because when a Scorpio feels unsafe expressing vulnerability, they don't go quiet forever. Eventually the sting emerges, but it's never random, never without cause. These little verbal jabs aren't designed to destroy, they're designed to expose, to let you feel, even momentarily, what they've been carrying in silence. And the irony, many people don't take these jabs seriously. They laugh it off. Don't be so dramatic. You're always intense. But that's the mistake, because when Scorpio starts using sarcasm or emotional stings, You're already on the edge. They're speaking through venom now because kindness wasn't heard. I once met a Scorpio man named Trey who said something I'll never forget. When I love you, my silence is soft. But when I start making dark jokes, it's because I've already buried the relationship and I'm just kicking the dust. Scorpio doesn't weaponize their words unless they've already tried every softer path. Sarcasm to them is the last language before detachment. So if your Scorpio is suddenly more cynical, more sharp, more uncharacteristically cruel in tone, don't fight the words, feel the wound underneath. Ask yourself, what didn't I see? What emotion did they stop feeling safe enough to express without pain? Because Scorpios never truly want to hurt you, they want to be understood. And when they realize you're not listening to their pain, they show it in the only way that still gets your attention. Through fire-laced words and truth coated in sting. And once that becomes their default language, you're no longer in a relationship, you're in its aftermath. Sign 11, they start transforming without you. This is one of the most powerful and misunderstood signs of Scorpio detachment. Suddenly they're evolving, changing their look, altering their routines, setting new goals that no longer include you. But it's not a revenge glow-up, it's not to make you jealous, it's spiritual molting. They're shedding the skin they wore when they loved you, and preparing for their next chapter. Because for Scorpio, when a connection starts to rot, they don't just walk away, they transform in its ashes. You'll notice they start reading new books, they surround themselves with different people, they become obsessed with fitness, art, or silence. But all of it has one thing in common, it no longer involves you. And this is the heartbreak many people miss. Scorpio doesn't always say, I'm leaving. Instead, they begin living a life where your presence becomes optional. It's not drama, it's destiny. I once worked with a Scorpio woman named Alexis who had been in a 10-year marriage. When the love faded, she didn't beg or threaten. She quietly signed up for therapy, learned a new language, moved her energy back into her body, started wearing different colors. One day, her husband said, I don't recognize you anymore. She answered calmly, that's because you only knew the version of me that tolerated emptiness. This version is full, and I don't need you to fill me anymore. That's the Scorpio transformation. It's spiritual, it's silent, it's unstoppable. And if you think you can chase after the new version, you're mistaken. Because Scorpio doesn't evolve in circles, they evolve forward, toward a version of themselves that no longer requires the pain they carried with you. So if your Scorpio is suddenly changing in ways that feel distant, if their passions are pulling them away, not toward you, if you feel like a ghost in their life while they're blooming, you're not paranoid. You're watching a rebirth that you're no longer part of. And once Scorpio finishes transforming, they won't return to explain, they'll be too far ahead. Living a life you no longer have the map for. Sign 12, they leave without drama, just silence. This is the moment most people never see coming. No explosive fight, no long speech, no emotional breakdown, just silence. You reach out and they don't respond. You come home and their energy is gone, even if their body is still there. They're not angry, they're not loud, they're just finished. And that's the most Scorpio ending of all. Because when a Scorpio truly lets go, they don't announce it. They become it. You won't get a list of reasons. You won't get closure. Because Scorpio believes, if you didn't feel what was breaking while I was still here, you don't deserve a front row seat to my goodbye. This kind of exit is chilling because it's so clean. No revenge, no manipulation, just a total energetic withdrawal, the same way a soul departs a body. Quiet, final, sacred. You may see them on social media looking radiant, You may hear from mutual friends that they've moved on, but you won't hear from them, not in the way you used to, because when Scorpio closes the door, it locks from the inside. I once heard a story about a Scorpio man who had loved someone deeply for years. She lied to him once, just once, but it was enough. He didn't scream, he didn't shame her, he simply said, "I felt your soul shift." That's all I needed. He left that night, left the apartment, left the country, started over, never contacted her again. That's not cruelty, that's Scorpio's way of honoring themselves. When the trust is broken at a soul level, they don't grieve with you, they grieve away from you. So if your Scorpio is suddenly gone, not physically but energetically, understand that this silence isn't a tactic. It's the echo of all the words they never said while they were still loving you. It's the sound of loyalty being buried. It's the song of a bond that died quietly long before you noticed. And the hardest truth, by the time you realize they're gone, they've already been healing without you. Conclusion: the soul behind the silence. Scorpios don't leave loudly, they leave when their soul no longer feels safe. They leave when their truth has been silenced too long. They leave when the depth they gave is returned with emptiness. And they don't leave to punish, they leave to protect the sanctity of their spirit, because for Scorpio, love is never casual. It is a sacred contract written in emotional blood, and when that contract is dishonored, they don't renegotiate, they burn it. Each of the 12 signs we explored today isn't just a signal of withdrawal. It's a step in Scorpio's sacred process of release and rebirth. From the silence to the logic, to the confrontation, to the ultimate vanishing, Scorpio doesn't just walk away from people, they walk back to themselves. And that's the part so many miss. The departure of a Scorpio isn't rejection, it's resurrection. They are ruled by Pluto, the planet of death and transformation. So when they feel the relationship has become a coffin for their soul, they choose the only path they've ever known. Evolution to those who have lost a Scorpio and still feel the sting. Know this, they didn't leave because they stopped feeling. They left because you stopped feeling them. And to the Scorpios watching, if you've ever had to withdraw in silence, if you've ever mourned someone while still lying beside them, if you've ever rebuilt yourself quietly while the world misunderstood your detachment, you are not cold. You are sacred, you are sovereign. You don't need to explain your silence, because the soul speaks loudest through what it no longer entertains. If this message touched something deep inside you, whether you're a Scorpio or someone who's loved one, leave a comment. Share your truth. This is a safe space for those who feel deeply and transform powerfully. And if you're on a journey of awakening, of love, of letting go, subscribe to the path to Buddha wisdom, because this is only the beginning. Your silence has power, your goodbye has meaning, and your transformation is sacred.